Excellent. Very hearty welcome, everyone. Good morning. And it is indeed my pleasure and honor to introduce two personalities considered catalysts of transformation. Both are authors of best selling books. Both have compassion at the core of their existence. Both are change makers in their own way. If there is one common aspect that highlights their participation today in this discussion, it is their heart and love based approach to everything they do. It is only apt that they lead a discussion on this topic and help us take nuggets of wisdom how to overcome fear with love using the power of compassion. While there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, anxiety, and stress due to COVID and the associated lockdown, a significant side effect of this is also being seen as loneliness, outcasting in some parts of the world, and dearth of self compassion in ones that are infected. We hope to find some takeaways from today's discussion that will help us address these. A brief introduction on today's guests. Dr. James Doty is a clinical professor in the Department of Neurosurgery at Stanford University and the director of CCARE, Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education at Stanford University School of Medicine. Dr. Doty is also an inventor, entrepreneur, and a philanthropist, having given support to a number of charitable organizations. He is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Into the Magic Shop, a neurosurgeon's quest to discover the mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart. Our next participant, Dr. Kamlesh Patel, known to many as Daaji, is the Heartfulness Guide. He is a man of many dimensions, a successful businessman, best-selling author, as well as a lifelong student of spirituality. A true silent change maker, Daaji supports the transformation of individuals, and this radiates out into families, communities, and the society for sustainable change. A spiritual catalyst displaying the perfect blend of the Eastern heart and the Western mind. Gentlemen, hearty welcome to both of you. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having me here with you today. And it's a pleasure, Daaji, to spend a little bit of time with you. We were chatting a little bit before. I think one of the challenges right now, as you well know, is how COVID-19 has challenged so many people and has resulted for some people in an increase in fear, anxiety, stress, and concern about an uncertain future. And hopefully, I think what our conversation will do is perhaps give people insight and awareness about how to overcome such fear and understand that we all have a choice. And regardless of our circumstances, we can choose the path of fear or love. And it's that choice which so often requires compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. So it's a joy to be with you, even in these difficult circumstances. I feel very honored and blessed.
So am I, Dr. Doty. Good to be with you. Longing to see you for the last few years, actually, ever since I went through your book. And surprisingly, one day, Kinney bumped into me and said, "Oh, since you are so happy with this book, etc., I know Dr. Doty. Can you, the two guys meet and explore further?" And there are plans to bring you here in India, but then somehow it didn't work out. Now, COVID made it possible. So, and that's how we are here. And good to be here. It's an honor to interact with you. And let us see how this fear can be casted off from the hearts of many people, many individuals. We'll try our best. Rest is up to him and individual self. As you say very nicely, that being compassionate and loving, choosing the path of love or choosing the path of fear, it's a personal choice. And we will only encourage how to go and explore the path of love. Of course, it's easier said than done, but we are with you all through. If not only now, but you can always ask a question. Even 2 months later, you can write to Dr. Doty or you can write to me, and we'll see how we can explore your confusion, your questions. And you can also share your great ideas, and we'll be very happy to incorporate your ideas in sharing with the people we interact. So let's go. We are ready.
Okay. Well, maybe what you could share, and I know many of the people watching are followers of Heartfulness, but and really, heartfulness is the key to not only how to allow each of us to thrive, but how we can create the environment for everyone to thrive. And maybe you could just share briefly with those who may not know your own journey and what happened to you in 1976 with Ram Chandra and how that transformed your life. Because so many of us, one event occurs that actually places us on the path. And I would love to hear that from you.
Dr. Riddhi, I was born in a farming family in a very small village in India. Very poor family. Very poor means you cannot imagine. We just were talking about poverty and how it doesn't let you come out of it, that creep, how to get out of that poverty. I think there is no bigger curse than poverty itself. But nevertheless, life was simple, and I was always seeking the truth. Why? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of my life here? Anyway, not that I had any answers, or not that I have even words to express it now, though I love to share the purpose of life, but now the lips are tight. It's not that I cannot share, I don't want to share. It's impossible to share. Well, the journey in spirituality began in 1976 when I stumbled upon one of my friends who was already meditating. And he said, why don't you join this path? It's very simple path and they don't charge you any money, etc. And there are no dogmas and there are no complexities and you don't have to leave your home and enter into forests. I said, lovely, then I would like to try. I don't want to go to Buddha ways. You see, he abandoned his wife. He was not compassionate to his wife. And later on, he started preaching compassion. It is only because he defaulted so badly on his family that compassion arose in his heart. I think something that happens very early, I think you try to correct it later on. See? And so I was somehow corrected in a magical way that you don't have to go to that hardship of life and punish yourself so much that you go move from forest to forest in search of God. And basic philosophy of the system is it's that you're not searching God for what? God is not lost. You are lost. So look for yourself, be compassionate to yourself, be loving to yourself, be merciful to yourself, and do whatever you can do to look after your family. That's all. Very simple. And I was told that, whatsoever you do in life with, at that time I was a student of pharmacy. And so, say, when you study, when you do your experiments, when you eat, when you interact with your family, when you have, let there be heart in all that you do. Be mindful, but always use the heart. As I would gladly put it, is mindfully hearty person. That's what we are trying to create. And I haven't regretted a bit because every time I studied pharmacy, every time I made some business decision later on after coming to United States, All the great decisions were made, critical decisions were made after thorough meditation. Whenever there was a problem, or when I stumbled and said, oh, this is a dead end and I cannot move any further, just close my eyes, and in a day or two, the solution will emerge. See, this is the beauty of heartfulness way of meditation. See, it doesn't solve all your problems, because where it works, the dimension where it works is different. You see, some people say, especially in India, Dr. Doty, they say, if you are so capable, why don't you make me fly like a bird? So they want to apply spiritual success and the miracles in the physical realm. There have been a lot of stories around such things, that a capable yogi can fly, capable yogi can even walk on the water, capable yogi can even walk through the wall. I say, I am none of that. But anything that you want to get done by a bird or walking through the wall, if you can do it by simply walking around through the door, what is your problem?
Exactly. Well,
Right. So the dimension, they want to apply the spiritual dimension in the material world, and they want to apply material world into the spiritual realm. There's going to be a clash. When the heart is used, I think it irons out everything. When you interact with people and you use heart, it brings joy. Even when there is a fight, you fight with a lot of joy. Where you're not cursing, or even if you may curse, there is still no antagonism. You understand each other so well. Even in friendship, even with your family, you might get upset a bit little now and then, but then heart again takes over, love presides, fear dissolves, and automatically this relationship takes a different meaning. Every now and then we understand, oh, why am I doing this? If I'm going to spoil my relationship, why am I even meditating? Why am I even using heart? So that is the journey I had undertaken with the Ramchandra, and he has been very, very graceful. He had the ability, Dr. Doty, that he could transmit. And when I was visiting, immigrated rather, to United States for the first time, I was wondering, will his transmission reach me? Because he is in India and I'm now going to United States, 9,000 or 13,000 kilometers away from India. Will it reach? And to my surprise, it never left me. This yogic transmission seems to engulf me and do that magical thing. Your book, Into the Magic Shop, I like to say into the magical heart of transmission. It does wonders.
Well, it's interesting. The rest of the title of my book is A Neurosurgeon's Quest to Discover the Mysteries of the Brain and the Secrets of the Heart. But really, at the end of the day, the power is in the heart. Just to share a very quick story, at the end of my pool, there's a statue, and it's a modern art piece of a Buddha without a head. And the Buddha is holding a persimmon. And I don't know if you've ever eaten a persimmon, but the fruit starts out very hard and bitter, but over time it becomes soft and sweet. And people ask me about why I put that statue there, because as I look out the window of my house into my backyard, it's there. And I tell people it's always a reminder, because the Buddha doesn't have a head, not to get lost in my head, but to focus on my heart. The purpose of the persimmon is, so many of us cling or have attachment to experiencing wonderful things and having people tell us how good we are and what we've accomplished is so important. But the reality is that for most of us, if we examine our lives, the greatest wisdom lessons we learn are actually in times of difficulty and pain, and not necessarily those where we're being acknowledged or receiving accolades. And the thing about the persimmon is that while experiencing pain and suffering, once time passes, oftentimes we realize the wisdom we learned from that experience and reflect back on it with actually an acknowledgement of how important it was and how it helped us. And that's like the persimmon. Over time, if you're patient, you understand these things can actually go from bitter and hard to sweet and soft. And in some ways, it's a reminder of the attitude of having equanimity, not being attached to the extremes, but having an evenness of temperament. And especially right now with the virus, so many people are sitting with fear. This is transitory. And fear oftentimes creates more fear. But these decisions about how we look at things are our choice. And Epictetus and other Stoic philosophers realized that we can control very few things, and COVID-19 and the pandemic is one of those. But what we can control, and one of the greatest lessons I learned in my life, is that how we respond to events is in our control. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons any of us can learn.
So true. So true. Something I can control, and what is outside me is beyond my control. Beautiful. I wish COVID would go away when we say, hey, you go away now. It's not going to happen. But
Exactly.
so we got to prepare ourselves. I think you all are smart individuals who are listening. I think more informed than most of us, and you know what to do. But our main concern is how to get out of the fear that is being built up over the years due to various situations. And situations, what is prevailing today, it can precipitate this fear. Think of the worst situation you ever had in life. Worst situation. How did you manage? Is this that bad? And as Dr. Doty put it so beautifully, that it's the resistance, it's the misery, it's the pain that teaches us the greatest lessons of life. What do we learn from this? I think each one of us will learn something in our own way, based on our conditioning, how we are conditioned and how we remain open to learning new things. If you say, oh, what the, I'm not going to, I can't deal with this anymore, then what will you learn? What can you learn when you deny? But if I say, okay, let me accept the situation, let me think over it, how I can manage through this, and what lessons I can learn. Openness. Even when I am confronted, most of us are confronted in daily situations, sometimes with good things, sometimes with terrible things. When you cannot solve the problem, for example, the political leader who makes decisions on your behalf, can you change that? You can't change that. So don't make that don't make that as your problem. It's beyond us to solve it. But individually, how I can work around it and be at peace. Compassion towards oneself, how I can remain at peace. How can I remain centered within myself? I can't change the circumstances. I can't even change the mindset of my spouse or my children. I can work only on myself. So how do we work? You see, earlier we were talking about problems faced because of loneliness, broken families. Um, these days, I think broken families, even though they may be very affluent, I think affluence and broken families, it's the worst combination. People may think that broken family and poverty is a terrible combination. I don't agree with that because the affluent and broken family, your affluence will heighten your brokenness. Your heart also will be desperate to get out of it at any cost. And you will use this affluence in destroying the relationship. Same thing happens to children. Why children to affluent families? They usually go on a disastrous path. Generally, they become drug addicts or alcoholics, or they do wrong things, or ultimately, when they cannot tolerate either themselves or the circumstances, they succumb to suicide. So we were talking, what could be the solution to this loneliness, anxiety, sleepless nights by the family members? And when we pin down the reason behind it, there can be so many reasons. How to get out of it, how to solve that riddle. So I was suggesting that meditation can help. But precisely Dr. Doty says that when you have a problem, meditation will not work. And I fully agree with that. Because when a man is hungry, either physically or emotionally, his mind is not going to be on meditation, on divinity, on compassion, on love. No. In fact, such thing will only repel. You will go in the opposite direction with a headlong speed. So we have to be compassionate for a person who is really going through these troubles and slowly and slowly and slowly change the mindset. Not ask what they should be doing. But let us walk with them, talk with them, make them feel comfortable and show love that we are with you. Don't judge those people. Right now, when COVID patients are moving from person, they say nowadays in some countries they make a sign or they paint their fingers that this is a COVID patient. So he or she becomes a pariah. People don't like such person. They say, oh, stay away from this. This untouchability gets into the way. And say, we have to be compassionate. So you can't be so brutal and say, hey, you go away, you are untouchable. No. Similarly, a person who is going through so much of trouble needs a lot of sympathy, a lot of love, affection. Many times they don't need much from us. Just lovingly listening to them solves many problems. Listening with empathy solves too many problems. So if you can lend your ears affectionately, it will go a long way. And then slowly you bring in this idea of how they can center themselves, how they can change their mindset, and slowly lead them through this magical path of exploring the heart. And when their heart slowly opens up, your job is done. Then he or she becomes the catalyst for another person to open the heart.
Well,
So change reaction.
absolutely.
Please go.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you mention yogic or meditation practice, what's amazing is, and we were talking about the choice of fear versus love. When one does these types of breathing exercises, meditation, the extraordinary thing that happens is that part of our brain that's associated with what we call the flight or fight response or the fear response, which has so many negative consequences. It shuts down your ability to think clearly because you're in survival mode. It actually very negatively affects your physiology. But when you do these types of practices, a heartfulness meditation, these yogic practices, what it does is it shifts you to this other part of our nervous system, from engagement of our sympathetic nervous system to engagement of our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what we call our rest and digest system. And what extraordinarily happens with these types of practices, when you engage that system, this part of your brain called your executive control area actually functions much better. You're able to make much more thoughtful, discerning decisions. You're actually more creative, you're more productive. And what I say is actually you're much more able to see the true nature of reality. The other comment I would like to make, referencing your statement about children of affluence. What's interesting is so many people from third world countries, they come to the West with this notion that somehow the West that is better than what they have. And the horribly sad reality is that they come from places where some of the greatest wisdom traditions have birthed or have been created, to come to a place where we worship conspicuous consumption. And what happens, and we know, is that if a person has enough to eat, shelter, security, actually many people from third world countries are extraordinarily happy and content. And they come to the West thinking that we have something better to offer them, yet all we offer them is the creation of craving for more to compare themselves to others. And when you talk about children of affluence, the problem is their parents are so distracted by wanting and craving that they don't have time for them and to be present for them. And this nurturing, this caring, this love that comes from having a nuclear family where people care for each other, where you look out for each other, occurs independent of wealth. And if you have that, that creates the environment to more easily have an open heart. You mentioned self-compassion. You know, so many of us, especially in the West, because of our circumstance, we will tell ourselves we're not good enough, we're not smart enough. If only we had done this, if only this had happened. And that actually creates internal suffering for us. But more importantly, what it does is it stops us from actually looking outward and first seeing that everyone is suffering in some way. You know, we become self-focused and ruminate. But once we're able to have self-affirmation, to be kind to ourselves, to accept ourselves, then we're able to see out that window much more clearly and recognize, first, that everyone is suffering. Second, that we can help alleviate another's suffering. And sometimes it's simply with a smile, a hug, giving them cigarettes and coffee. And then once you realize that, an amazing thing happens, because when you care for the other, when you open your heart, when you see the other as yourself, then a magic happens with your own physiology, because it's in that circumstance when your physiology works its best, when your reward centers are stimulated, and that is the place where you find meaning in your life and ultimately transcendence. And that transcendence is the recognition of our oneness.
I love that. I love that, how physiologically we can move and enter the sphere of emotion and spirituality. Beautiful. That reminds me, when we are talking about affluent families, it reminds me of one event I was going through. I had to inaugurate one place place of worship, meditation hall, where people congregate and meditate together. But 40, 50 could get together and meditate. So I was asked to cut the ribbon. So the hostess, she gave me the scissor to cut the ribbon. And I couldn't cut the ribbon because the scissors were blunt. It was so blunt, I had to then just cut a little piece and then tear it. Afterward, we were meditating for about 20 minutes or so. I realized that why didn't this scissor work? Because answer was automatic. It was blunt. Why was it blunt? Because it was overused and never sharpened. In our lives, and especially children belonging to affluent families, they're so much exposed to pleasures, comfort. Overused part of that life, overused scissor of pleasures becomes blunt. And when you keep on avoiding at any cost discomfort, pain, that part of the scissor remains very sharp. Little bit of inconvenience and it hurts you like hell, and then say, oh, I can't handle this. On one side, you need more and more stimulus to make you happy. And on other side, such children, they can't take it. When they don't have chappals or shoe to wear, they make noise. They don't have some good food on one day, there is hell in the family. And when there's a fight, then all these troubles begin, breaking down in the families. Who is the cause? We as parents. We missed how to train them. See. We didn't recognize that this pleasure side of the scissor can become blunt and they'll demand more and more. We try to circumvent any kinds of inconvenience, not that we want to trust inconvenience to them, but when they are going through it, let them manage it, let them master it themselves. I think we have to learn a lot from this small example of a scissor. Another thing that comes to my mind is that as we equip ourselves for good, during our good times, when we are able to regulate our mind properly, then during tough times, the regulated mind will come to our help. One of my friends recently took ill. Very serious, and as well as terminally, he's on a deathbed, I would say. He knows, we know each other from, again, 1970s, studied together in pharmacy. At that time, and I used to request him, let's meditate, why don't you learn? I would like to teach you and all that. He kept on avoiding. Now he keeps calling me, I want to meditate, but he cannot even sit. He's that sick. One day, his wife helped him to sit with the back support, but he could not. He started throwing up. And I keep telling many people that, why don't you meditate? No, but the tradition says you have to meditate when you get old, after 50s. But after 50s, you may not be in a position to sit properly and meditate and focus your mind. Your mind will become weaker. Your physical body will becoming weaker. So it's the best time is now. Would you postpone your salaries and say, okay, I'm going to take my salary after 10 years? The benefits of spirituality, you cannot compare. It makes us complete. When we experience this total centeredness inside, when you are with yourself in totality, you don't have to practice anything. You become fully aware on your own without any efforts after that. See? If I say anything further about Gandhian philosophy, You might say, oh, I'm against Gandhi. No, I'm not against Gandhi. For example, nonviolence. When you compare that with compassion, which is greater, Gandhian philosophy or compassion philosophy? I would always go with compassion. Because with non-violence, you're happy by saying, I have not hurt anyone. I'm a non-violent person. But compassion means I'm going one step ahead in making the other person comfortable, not just not hurting, but also trying to make that person feel comfortable, happy. See, that's what we are trying to do. We vaccinate individuals against the future mental problems that can arise. When mental problems comes, you will not be in a position to meditate. So might as well vaccinate against all those things and prepare yourself. It doesn't matter whenever it comes. If it doesn't come, great. And to sail through life in such a way that you do not depend for your individual happiness on someone else. You don't even have to pray God. God give me this and God give me that. You remain a beggar. Maybe you are begging before from a human beings. Now you have become a beggar in front of God. You're still a beggar. So though you can be so successful without this centeredness, without this focus inside, this contentment, there is no success in life. So to arrive at total success, where you don't have to depend on anyone, including God, is the way of meditation. And that's what Buddha calls it nirvana, absolute.
I think what you're saying is correct. You know, God can take many forms for many people, but the reality is we are automatically connected to that power. It's just we have to understand that connection. And within each of us is incredible power. And it is this power that allows us to be successful. And again, I'm not talking about external success. I'm talking about what we were discussing earlier, which is transcendence, which is beyond ourselves and the recognition that we're all connected and we're all one. And that is nirvana. And it's certainly a challenge to get there. But it doesn't happen unless there is some effort put forward. It's like being an athlete. You can't expect to reach the finish line first if you've never practiced or never made the effort. Earlier, you and I were talking about my book, and you were kind enough to mention this part of it where I had given a lecture and used what I term the alphabet of the heart. And I think we're talking about being centered and being connected. I'll just share that with some of the listeners because I think it is very powerful for many people. And as you acknowledge, it actually allows us to become centered and understand what's important. And one is the first letter, and it's 10 letters of the alphabet, is compassion for yourself, which then allows you to have compassion for others. D, recognizing the dignity of every human being. E is equanimity, this evenness of temperament in all different circumstances. F is practicing forgiveness because anger at others only creates poison for ourselves. Having gratitude for what we have, not what we want. H is humility, which is so challenging for so many of us in the Western world. I is integrity or values that we live by and bound our behaviors. J is for justice or a sense of fairness or our responsibility to those who are vulnerable. K is kindness, simply the act of showing love towards another without any expectation And of course, all of this is contained by love.
Beautiful. I love that one. See, I was so mesmerized by this. Easy to remember and easier to grasp the values that you have detailed out in a very simple way. Uh, Otherwise, it's easy to forget uh, certain values in life.
I'm a
And
very simple guy.
we resonate.
Gentlemen,
Yeah.
I have a question here. I thought it's appropriate as we approach the quarter of the hour, and I'd love to see you talk about this. One interesting question is, how do we make compassion as the default quality in us to be ever present, especially individuals who, for whatever reason, are fighting, let's say, a depression or some kind of loneliness?
Well, I think that is a big challenge. Lonely, it creates rumination and it makes you feel as if you're the only one suffering. There are a few things. One of the greatest things one can do is actually to go do something for someone else. We know that when an individual reaches out to another who's suffering, it actually decreases the degree of rumination and even depression. It's like when you're alone trying to sleep at night and you have all these thoughts going on. The greatest thing you can do is to distract yourself from those thoughts. And the greatest good you can do is to use the distraction of being of service to another, because as I said earlier, that actually stimulates that part of your brain which is associated with your reward and pleasure centers. So that's one thing. And of course, exercise, which can result in the release of endorphins, which make you feel good, is another mechanism. Now, I'm not saying that that's the solution for severe deep depression, but for many people, it can offer great benefit. And again, actually, it has been found that if someone takes the time to journal what they are grateful for, then that can also be another antidote. And the other example is, loneliness, being by yourself. It is very difficult and it creates the environment for this self-rumination. But again, reaching out, making an effort, realizing that there are others who are in a similar situation and making the effort to connect is also a remedy. And again, I'm not trying to diminish anyone's suffering or to imply that they're easy solutions all the time, but there are some techniques that can help many, many people. And really, I think it gets back to the basis of our conversation today, which is compassion, having an open heart, looking outward, making an effort to connect. Every one of those actions has been shown to decrease loneliness, decrease depression, decrease anxiety, and decrease fear.
I can't agree more than this. It's beautiful the way you have presented how we can go out and share and care for others. To a large extent, that itself removes a lot of problems from our system. Also, understanding the problem greatly helps us. When we make a journal of what we are going through and trying to put down what is really troubling us, then the solution can emerge. Instead of remaining confused about the problem, when you have clarity of the problem, then the solution can be found easily. So you have to have a clearer mind. You can arrive at clearer mind on, I think, when you ruminate over, not on the problem, but waiting for the solution to emerge. Not to meditate over the problem, but sit with the initial question in mind that I'm sitting for meditation in order to find the solution, but not meditate on the problem. Just relax, go into those moments where you are in love with something very profound. Go back to those moments when you are so joyful and see if that moment can give you some solution, some direction. If nothing else, you will be overwhelmed by that love or joy that you once had. And you might be able to recall it once again and make it lasting.
You know, I
We
think
have,
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
I was suggesting we have this in heartfulness practices. We have multiple practices, not just meditation, but how to clean, meaning how to decondition ourselves. You know, certain habits, certain traits, the way we ruminate, the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave, these are all preconditioned. And we can slowly remove this deep conditioning that we carry from our eons of past, from very early childhood, how we were impacted, and see if those conditionings can be removed. Then the hold of those conditioning will not be on your mind. And then you're, to that extent, you're free to behave, free to act, free to think. So we have certain techniques and methodologies where we can use them. There are many other methods, as Dr. Doty was talking about breathing exercise, not only deep breathing, but selective breathing through left nostril will um, increase parasympathetic response more than just breathing with both nostrils. What I recommend is this: close this right nostril and inhale deeply with the left nostril 10 times, and you will see the amazing effect. You will see that heart rate will go down. It's a sign that your parasympathetic is now kicked in.
What if you're left-handed? Yeah. What if
Ask your wife to close the nose there. Both the nose. Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to mention also, which you actually alluded to, is I think one of the most powerful exercises we can do, or meditation practices, is to think about that person who gave you unconditional love and sit with that and feel the warmth of that covering you, and how it feels to receive unconditional love, and how it makes you feel, and it gives you safety. And the
Yes.
very nature of thinking of that starts actually fixing your physiology, making it function at its best. And when you're actually in that mode where you feel the warmth and understand the power of unconditional love, it actually, if you will, makes you see with greater clarity your purpose, and also decreases your fear and anxiety. And the other thing is that we have a tendency to immediately respond to negative events. And the thing is that that often causes suffering. And one of the things that I have learned is, instead of immediately reacting to a situation, and this has actually been very helpful in my neurosurgical practice, is to sit there and pause and think instead of immediately reacting. And when you're more thoughtful in that way, it shifts you to this engagement of your parasympathetic nervous system and allows you to think with much more clarity and make more discerning decisions about the situation.
So I love this. I use this technique of pause and poise many times, many a times. It's not that we are immune to not responding with anger. We are all angry people, but we can postpone our anger. We'll see to it. I'll see to it tomorrow. And when we postpone this bursts of angers for hour later or 2 hours later, that Dr. Doty, I'll see to it that I discuss this tomorrow with you. Then I might even forget what I was going to, shout and scream to Dr. Doty. And then, I may even buy time in understanding why was I getting angry? And thank God I was not angry. And then you realize your fault, and then you regret. And then from anger that was going to be, now you develop compassion. Oh, thank God I didn't burst on Dr. Doty yesterday. Glad I waited. And compassion starts. So this pause is a great, I think it's a great medicine, great
Well,
antidote rather. Beautiful thing.
well, and what's amazing, if you were to sit back and think about those types of situations where you've shown that degree of anger, and then you say to yourself, if that was my last interaction with that person, is that what I would want it to be? And then you realize how so often our anger and our are totally irrelevant and meaningless, the whole event that you got angry about. And frankly, I think that's most instances.
Beautiful, beautiful. Actually, it is nice to see, it culminate to a point where a simple suggestion to even approach a problem from a place of compassion can change the dimension of the problem. I was hoping we have a few minutes. We could take everybody, every listener on this, to that place of compassion through a short meditation and get them to experience how it is to be in their very own hearts, that residence of compassion. Daaji, please.
Well, this heartfulness way of meditation is very simple. Think of what makes you happy, what makes you very loving. If it is divine light, so be it. If it's a guru that you follow, entertain his image in your heart. If it's any god or goddess, if you believe in them, so be it. Think of something that gives you a lot of love, a lot of joy in your heart, and have that idea in your heart as long as you can, and sit with this idea that the divine presence of love is in my heart, and that is attracting my attention inward. So you got the picture? Think of the presence of that divinity in your heart that is bringing a lot of love in your heart. So let's meditate on this idea. If thoughts do arise, let them come. Just remind yourself that at the moment I'm meditating. So we'll sit with this idea for another 10 minutes or so. Let's meditate. That's all. It's more than 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, it's good. So, Dr. Doty, it's time to say goodbye.
With
So
joy.
wonderful. Yes, it's a nice chats.
Yes, I look forward to our next conversation, hopefully in person.
Yes, yes, I would love to. I'd love to.
Well, let's plan on that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It was wonderful. There were several takeaways. And for those whose questions could not be answered, please feel free to email and we will try and respond to those so you can have some insights. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day or rest of the day, wherever you might be in your time zones. Thank you very much. Namaste.